Dolly Parton has spent decades shaping her image as the queen of kindness, a woman so beloved that even her critics usually keep quiet. But behind the rhinestones, behind the bright smile, behind the endless charm, there's a story most people never hear. A story of tension, betrayal, heartbreak, and clashes with some of the biggest names in music history. Dolly may look like the sweetest person on earth, but the industry didn't always treat her that way. And some people left wounds she never forgot. Once you hear what really happened, it becomes clear. Even America's sweetheart has a list of stars she hopes never to work with again. To understand how these feuds formed, you need to understand the woman behind the glitter. Dolly Parton didn't grow up anywhere near the glamorous life she built. Born in a tiny one-room cabin in Locust Ridge, Tennessee, she grew up with 11 siblings, hand-me-down clothes, and a father who couldn't read or write but had the kind of sharp instincts most business schools can't teach. Her mother filled the home with stories, songs, and faith. Music wasn't a hobby for the Partons. It was survival. With nothing but their voices and determination, Dolly and her siblings learned to harmonize on the porch, performing in church, and at small community gatherings. By age 10, Dolly was already appearing on local radio and TV shows. And on the day after she graduated high school, she packed a single bag and left for Nashville with no money, hardly any connections, and a heart full of ambition. She wrote songs for other artists at first, but that wasn't enough. Dolly wanted to be the one holding the microphone. Her big break came in 1967 when she released Dumb Blonde, a song that announced to the world that she might play the part, but she certainly wasn't one. That same year, she joined the Porter Wagoner Show, and everything changed. Her charm, her voice, her stage presence, all of it helped turn her into a household name. Fans tuned in every week to watch Dolly light up their screens, and while people loved the duets and the glittering costumes, something darker was brewing behind the scenes. Because Dolly's first major feud began with the very man who gave her the opportunity she'd been dreaming of. In the beginning, working with Porter Wagoner felt like destiny. Porter was already a massive star with a successful TV show, hit records, and one of the most loyal fan bases in country music. When he brought Dolly on as a replacement for a beloved singer, the audience resisted at first, even booing her during performances. But Porter stood by her, and Dolly pushed forward with that quiet determination she'd carried since childhood. Before long, the two became one of the most iconic duos in country history. Their harmonies were flawless, their chemistry undeniable, and their hits came one after another. On camera, they looked like the perfect team. But Porter wasn't just a duet partner. He wanted to be a mentor, a manager, and at times, the person in control of Dolly's future. He handled her stage appearances, made decisions about their music, and expected her to follow his lead. And for a while she did. But Dolly Parton was never meant to be the side act. Her ambitions were bigger than the structure Porter built around her. As her fame grew, so did her desire to steer her own ship. She didn't want to be defined by someone else's vision. She wanted freedom, creative, personal, and professional. By the early 1970s, tensions between them were impossible to ignore. Porter wanted to hold on to the dynamic they'd created. Dolly wanted to soar beyond it. Their partnership began to feel more like a cage than a collaboration. The final straw came in 1974 when Dolly made the emotional decision to leave the show. Her goodbye wasn't harsh. She expressed gratitude, acknowledged what Porter meant to her, and even wrote, "I will always love you," as a tribute to their complicated relationship. In public, it seemed like a gentle parting. But behind the scenes, the story was far from peaceful. 5 years later, Porter sued Dolly for $3 million, claiming she owed him for management fees and a share of her income after leaving. To Dolly, who believed she had already repaid him with loyalty, respect, and years of collaboration, it felt like a deep personal betrayal. She settled quietly to avoid a prolonged fight, but the emotional damage was real. It took years before they were able to reconcile. Dolly later inducted Porter into the Country Music Hall of Fame, and when he fell ill in 2007, she was by his bedside. But no matter how warmly she speaks of him today, the truth remains. Their partnership carved one of the biggest scars in her career. But Porter wasn't the only star whose relationship with Dolly crumbled under pressure. Her next clash formed inside a trio that looked perfect from the outside. When Dolly joined Linda Ronstadt and Emmylou Harris for the long-awaited trio project, it should have been the ultimate friendship. Three powerhouse voices, three legends, one dream collaboration. Their harmonies were stunning, their chemistry on paper undeniable. But once they got into the studio, the cracks began to show, especially between Dolly and Linda. The problem wasn't personal at first, it was creative. Dolly was fast in the studio, recording in one or two takes and trusting her instincts. Linda was the opposite. She believed in precision and was willing to spend hours, sometimes entire days, perfecting every note. Dolly grew frustrated with Linda's meticulous process, and Linda grew irritated with Dolly's spontaneity. Emmylou ended up playing referee, trying to keep the peace as the tension threatened to derail the album. Even though the trio record became a massive success, winning awards and praise from critics, the environment behind the scenes was anything but harmonious. Things got worse when Linda publicly called Dolly unreliable, saying she often canceled sessions or showed up late. That comment stunned fans. No one had ever accused Dolly of being unprofessional. And for Dolly, someone who prides herself on her work ethic, it stung deeply. Their second collaboration, Trio 2, was delayed for years due to label issues and strained communication. By the time it finally came out, the closeness that once existed between the women had faded. The music remained magical, but the friendship never fully recovered. If the feud with Linda Ronstadt came down to clashing artistic styles, the next conflict centered around a single song that changed the course of Dolly's life and the entire music industry. After Dolly released I Will Always Love You, Elvis Presley expressed interest in recording his own version. For Dolly, hearing that Elvis wanted to sing her work felt like a dream, but that dream turned sour quickly. Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had a strict rule. Elvis wouldn't record any song unless he received 50% of the publishing rights. Dolly had spent her entire early career fighting to be respected as a songwriter, and giving away half of one of her most personal creations felt like surrendering her identity. Dolly stood firm. She refused to give up her rights, even though it meant turning down the king of rock and roll. Elvis was disappointed. The relationship cooled, and Dolly said she felt a shift, not anger, but a quiet, painful distance. Her decision seemed risky at the time, but decades later, Whitney Houston's version of I Will Always Love You became one of the most successful songs in history, earning Dolly millions and cementing her legacy as one of the greatest songwriters of all time. Still, the situation left its mark. Sometimes, the hardest decisions leave the deepest emotional trails. While the Elvis situation stayed mostly private, Dolly's next feud exploded across national radio. Howard Stern, known for pushing boundaries, crossed a line that even he couldn't justify. In 2008, his team edited Dolly's audiobook into a fake interview filled with offensive, crude, and racist comments, all spliced together using her real voice. The segment shocked fans and humiliated Dolly. She issued a rare public statement expressing how deeply hurt she was and hinted at possible legal action, calling the bit vile. Stern never apologized. He brushed it off as satire, leaving Dolly to deal with the fallout. It took 15 years before she ever set foot in his studio, and even then the tension was obvious. And then there was Jeff Tweedy. Unlike Stern, Tweedy didn't attack Dolly's character. Instead, he took aim at her songwriting. In an interview, he dismissed her lyrics as simple and lacking emotional depth. He even joked that she should have stopped after Jolene. His comments weren't vulgar, but they struck a nerve because songwriting is the most personal part of Dolly's artistry. She never responded, but insiders say the remarks didn't sit well with her. After all, her songs have touched millions, crossed genres, and defined entire decades. Her lyrics may be simple, but simple doesn't mean shallow. And Dolly's emotional storytelling has outlasted nearly every critic she's ever had. Through every betrayal, lawsuit, insult, or harsh comment, Dolly Parton has stayed the same: graceful, resilient, and determined to rise above the drama. These feuds reveal a side of her that most people never see. A woman who has been underestimated, disrespected, and targeted, yet still chooses kindness every time. But make no mistake, she remembers what happened. And once you see the battles she's fought behind closed doors, you'll never look at Dolly Parton's glittering public image the same way again.